Hello, welcome to Astronautics for Exploit. I am Dr. Ayanshola Ogundele and I will be presenting Spaceflight Reservation. The overview of my presentation is as follows: Space Tourism Reservation, Launch Vehicles Reservation, Space Hotel and Research Reservation, Spaceflight Rideshare and Payload Reservation. For every 1 billion particles of antimatter, there were 1 billion and 1 particles of matter. And when the mutual annihilation was complete, 1 billionth remained. And that is our present universe. Space travel is life enhancing. And anything that is life enhancing is worth doing. It makes you want to live forever. Many decades after the first human space flights, space is becoming the new frontier in tourism. Nowadays, the way space enthusiasts are trooping to go to space and become commercial and private astronauts is being propelled by the urge to see what lies up there in the universe. The eyes of the world look into space, to the moon, to the planets, and beyond for answers to many human curious questions and our place in the universe. In 1919, Robert Goddard published a paper titled A Method of Reaching Extreme Altitudes. His approach to the development of liquid-fuel rockets helped a better understanding of interplanetary travel. As a result of this paper, spaceflight, an application of astronautics to fly spacecraft into or through outer space, became an engineering possibility. As at present, rockets are the only means of reaching Earth's orbit or beyond. As private space companies such as SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, Action Space, Space Adventures, Space Perspective, Zero Gravity Corporation, and Rocket Lab are developing reusable launch vehicles, platforms, as well as spaceports that will enable space transportation. Advancements of technology and humans' interest in space exploration and space tourism is becoming astronomical. The space industry positioned itself as a trillion-dollar industry. The disruptive and transformative technologies embarked upon by the present-day space companies is a catalyst, sparking new eras of modernization and increase in complementary innovations. In order to travel to space, send a payload to space, or to engage in rideshare, or reserve a launch vehicle for onward sending of one satellite to the Earth's orbit, or beyond, or for space tourism. Spaceflight reservation, which serve as ticket to space travel, must be made either directly with the launch service providers, commercial space station providers, or space tourism companies providers, or indirectly through third party. Spaceflight is an application of astronautics to the flying of spacecraft into or through the outer space. Spaceflight, which could be with or without human beings on board the spacecraft, is mostly uncrewed and generally conducted using satellites. Beyond Earth's orbit, space probes are used to perform various space exploration purposes. They are operated through telerobotic or autonomous control. This picture shows an illustration of Parker Solar Probe approaching the Sun. Modes of achieving spaceflight. Spaceflight can be achieved through different types of launch systems. Conventionally, by rocket launching, which provide the initial thrust to overcome the force of gravity and propel a spacecraft from the surface of the Earth. The motion of a spacecraft, both when unpropelled and when under propulsion, is covered by the area of study, which is referred to as astrodynamics. This video shows SpaceX Falcon 9 launching. Spaceflight Reservation. In order to travel to space, send a payload to space, or to engage in rideshare, or reserve a launch vehicle for onward sending of satellites to the Earth's orbit or beyond, or for space tourism, spaceflight reservation, which serve as ticket to space travel, must be made either directly with the launch service providers, commercial space station provider, or space tourism companies provider, or indirectly through third parties. This picture shows Virgin Galactic's VSS Unity gliding back to Earth after a supersonic test flight on May 29, 2018. Space Tourism Reservation. This can be divided as follows: Sub-Orbital Space Tourism Reservation, Orbital Space Tourism Reservation, and Lunar Tourism Reservation. Sub-Orbital Space Tourism Reservation. Suborbital spaceflight is a spaceflight which could not complete one full orbital revolution, and as a result cannot become an artificial satellite or have the ability to reach escape velocity. The path of an object launched from Earth that reaches the Kármán line at 100 kilometers or 62 miles above sea level and then falls back to Earth is considered a suborbital spaceflight. This picture shows Richard Branson and 3 other passenger suborbital spaceflight of July 11, 2021, where he floated in space aboard the Virgin Galactic rocket plane. Suborbital space tourism is a form of space tourism which undergoes suborbital spaceflight and offers short-time, zero-gravity, and Earth view from space to its customers. Most of the operations of suborbital space tourism vehicles involve a flight that reaches the Kármán line. The proposed operational locations, or spaceports, are existing airports or spaceports specially built at locations where economic interests, such as Spaceport America in New Mexico. This picture shows Jeff Bezos of Blue Origin suborbital space flight of July 20, 2021, where he floated in space aboard Blue Origin capsule. Suborbital Space Tourism Reservation. Virgin Galactic Spaceship 2 spaceflight system. It consists of White 2, a custom-built carrier aircraft, and Spaceship 2, the world's first passenger-carrying. White 2 is a custom-built 4-engine dual-fuselage jet aircraft designed to carry Spaceship 2 up to an altitude of approximately 50,000 feet. Spaceship 2 is a reusable winged spacecraft which is designed to carry 8 people, including 2 pilots, into space safely and with high frequency. This picture shows Spaceship 2 and White 2. Virgin Galactic's goal is to become the world's first commercial space line and to offer regular flights from Spaceport America in southern New Mexico. Reservation with Virgin Galactic. Future private astronauts can make suborbital space tourism reservations with Virgin Galactic. Presently, through Virgin Galactic, a ticket to space costs around $450,000 per seat for the space trip. This picture shows Virgin Galactic spaceplane cabin. Blue Origin New Shepard Reservation. The New Shepard rocket and capsule combo is designed to autonomously fly 6 passengers more than 62 miles, that is 100 kilometers, above Earth into suborbital space, high enough to experience a few minutes of weightlessness and see the curvature of the planet before the pressurized capsule returns to Earth on the parachutes. This picture shows a Blue Origin New Shepard, pictured above during a test flight, carrying a paying passenger. Blue Origin's goal is to one day have millions of people living and working in space. Blue Origin Reservation. For a troop on Blue Origin's New Shepard, seats typically could cost between $250,000 and $500,000. This picture shows interior of Blue Origin crew capsule. Orbital Space Tourism Reservation. An orbital space flight requires much higher velocities than a suborbital flight, and so it is technologically much more challenging to achieve. To achieve orbital spaceflight, the tangential velocity around the Earth is as important as altitude. In order to perform a stable and lasting flight in space, the spacecraft must reach the orbital speed required for a closed orbit. This picture shows SpaceX all-civilian orbital spaceflight of September 15, 2021, the first commercial astronaut mission to orbit Earth aboard SpaceX Dragon, which was sponsored by Chad Isaacman. Orbital Space Tourism Reservation. Tickets to space for space tourism could be obtained from the companies such as SpaceX, Boeing, Space Adventures, and Action Space. This picture shows Yusaku Maezawa, a Japanese billionaire, before departing for International Space Station. SpaceX Orbital Space Tourism Reservation. Spaceflight reservations can be made directly to SpaceX or arranged by another company to fly interested space tourists to space using SpaceX vehicle. ASIAN mission using SpaceX Crew Dragon. The private 10-day ASIAN mission, one including an 8-day stay at the International Space Station, which was planned for January 2022, is costing each of the 4 private astronauts a sum of about $55 million for a seat in the SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule. This picture shows Action Space proposed space station. Boeing reservation. Boeing Starliner, a class of 2 partially reusable spacecraft designed to transport crew to the International Space Station and other low Earth orbit destinations, is being constructed. Boeing Starliner is one of the commercial spacecraft which is being planned to transport commercial crew to and from the International Space Station. This picture shows Boeing Starliner. Space Adventure Reservation. Space Adventure goal is to enable as many people as possible to experience what it is like to live in space, to circle the Earth, or travel beyond Earth orbit. Dennis Tito, first space tourist. Dennis Tito, the first space tourist to fund his own trip into space, and whose trip was organized by the Space Adventure, paid about $20 million for his trip to the International Space Station in low Earth orbit, where he performed several scientific experiments in orbit. This picture shows first space tourist Dennis Tito. Space Adventure Reservations. In order to book a ticket to space for space tourism reservation, it could be made with the Space Adventures. Yusaku Maezawa and Irano flew to the International Space Station through a partnership with Space Adventure, a company that broadcasts trips to space for interested tourists. This picture shows Japanese billionaire Yusaku Maezawa arriving at the International Space Station for his 12-day space vacation. Asian Space Reservation. Asian Space goal is to create the world's first commercial space station. Asian Space, a private aerospace company that wants to build the first commercial space station, is planning to send a crew of private citizens to the International Space Station in 2022 aboard the SpaceX Crew Dragon on a 10-day Asian Mission 1, including an 8-day stay at the International Space Station. The cost for each of the 4 private astronauts is estimated to about $55 million. This picture shows an artist's conception of a space traveler floating in zero gravity. Lunar Tourism Reservation. SpaceX. Yusaku Maezawa, a Japanese billionaire, announced his intention to fly around the moon on SpaceX's future Starship rocket one day. Their moon mission. Yusaku Maezawa invited 8 members of the public to join him for a trip around the moon on Elon Musk's SpaceX flight. He said we pay for the entire journey, so those who come on board will fly for free. The mission, called the Moon, is scheduled to fly in 2023. This picture shows Yusaku Maezawa, a Japanese billionaire, in front of a Falcon 9 rocket at SpaceX headquarters with Elon Musk, SpaceX founder. Space Adventure Lunar Tourism Reservation. Space Adventure is offering advanced booking for a future lunar mission involving travel to circumnavigate the moon on a circumlunar trajectory. Pricing was announced at about $100 million per seat as of 2007. Space Adventures plan to utilize 2 Russian launch vehicles, a Soyuz capsule being launched into low Earth orbit by a Soyuz launch vehicle. This picture shows artistic rendition of the Starship firing its engines while passing by the moon. Once in orbit, the crew capsule will dock with a second uncrewed lunar propulsion module, which will then power the circumlunar portion of the trip. The mission is planned to last 8 to 9 days, including 2.5 days in Earth orbit, docking with the propulsion stage, 5 days to reach lunar orbit, a 45-minute observation of the moon from as low as 100 kilometers, and 2.5 days to return to Earth. This picture shows SpaceX Starship for the moon spaceflight. Launch Vehicles Reservation. Launch vehicle, a rocket-powered vehicle used to transport a spacecraft beyond Earth's atmosphere, either into orbit around Earth or to some other destination in outer space, is very essential for the continuous exploration of space. A launch system includes the launch vehicle, launch pad, vehicle assembly and fueling systems, range safety, and other related infrastructure. This picture shows Atlas 5541 launch vehicle. Launch vehicle providers. Some of the launch vehicle providers are SpaceX, Arianespace, Spaceflight Industries, United Launch Alliance, Rocket Lab, Northrop Grumman Innovation System, Sea Launch, China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, Aerocort Launch Services, International Launch Services, and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. This picture shows Rocket Lab launch vehicle. Launch Vehicle Reservation. In order to be able to send a satellite, a payload, or a space tourist into space, launch vehicle has to be reserved ahead. The reservation must be made on time in order to prevent long queue and delay in launching. This picture shows Arianespace Ariane 5 rocket. Arianespace Ariane 5 rocket with NASA's James Webb Space Telescope on board at the launch pad on Thursday, December 23, 2021 at Europe's spaceport, the Guiana Space Center. The James Webb Space Telescope is a large infrared telescope with a 21.3-foot primary mirror. The observatory will study every phase of cosmic history, from within our solar system to the most distant observable galaxies in the early universe. Space Hotel and Research Reservation. Space Hotel Reservation. Adventure on Aurora Station. Orionspan is planning to launch the world's first luxurious space hotel, which is referred to as Aurora Station. Aurora Space Station, a technology concept for a private commercial space station in low Earth orbit, is a concept that envisions a capacity of 6 people, 2 crew and 4 tourists. This picture shows Orion Span Aerospace Station for spaceflight and as a space hotel. Orion Span will be hosting tourists, astronauts, space research, and manufacturing on board Orion Station in low Earth orbit. In order to partake in the 12-day adventure, space reservations have to be made. This picture shows a luxury hotel in space, referred to as Aurora Space Station. Space experiments on International Space Station. The International Space Station is empowering space-based research and technology development so as to benefit humankind for years to come. In order to carry out space-based research reservations, the reservations have to be made. This picture shows International Space Station. Spaceflight Rideshare and Payload Reservation. Spaceflight Rideshare. Small satellites reach orbit by tagging along with larger, more expensive satellites, and the waiting list can be long and unpredictable. Due to a major push in the launch industry to cater directly to the booming small satellite market, a number of new rocket companies are promising to build scaled-down rockets that can provide quick and easy launches for small satellites. This picture shows a rendering of Rideshare small sat deployments from Falcon 9 into space. Spaceflight Rideshare reservations with SpaceX. SpaceX has a Rideshare program for launching small satellites into orbit. Through the program, the customers are allowed to buy pods directly from SpaceX. Initially, SpaceX offered to launch secondary payloads up to 150 kg, that is 330 pounds, to a sun-synchronous orbit for $2.25 million if customers signed up and made a reservation at least 12 months before the launch. Initially, if reservation is made between 12 and 6 months, prices will be increased to about $3 million. This picture shows Spaceflight 64 satellite Rideshare launch. Arianespace Rideshare and Payload Reservation. Arianespace plans to be launching dedicated Rideshare mission on the Vega rocket. The flight is part of the Small Spacecraft Mission Service. Arianespace also planned Rideshare missions directly into geostationary orbit in response to the rise of small satellites needing to be in that orbit. Customers can make reservations and buy flights up to 6 to 12 months before the launch. This picture shows a few of SpaceX's first 60 Starlink satellites in orbit, in stacked configuration with the Earth as a brilliant blue backdrop on May 23, 2019. Rocket Lab Rideshare and Payload Reservations. Rocket Lab offers rideshare capabilities in their existing Electron rocket with the ability of the kick-stage ability to reignite. The vehicle can alternate between various orbits in order to deploy the various payloads. This picture shows Rocket Lab small satellite Rideshare. For more information, contact Astronautics for Exploit. You've been watching and listening to Spaceflight Reservations. Thank you.